This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
"35 civilians killed after a militant attack in Burkina Faso." The state of Liberia's health sector after the Ebola threat earlier in the year. And how Rwanda has gone round the addiction problem and is using morphine to keep pain away. This is CGTN. Welcome to Africa Live with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also ahead on the program. The central bank in Somalia orders forex traders to close forex accounts in commercial banks immediately. And in your sport, the Proteas are ready to face the world champions England in a 4-day test. We start our Christmas bulletin with devastating news out of Burkina Faso. A militant attack has killed 35 people, civilians, most of them women. The assault took place in the northern South province. Authorities say 80 militants and 7 members of the local security forces died in clashes. Burkinabe troops were able to regain control of the military outpost after several hours. The army says they seized a large number of weapons and motorbikes from the militants. President Roch Marc Kabore has declared 2 days of mourning. Well, 2019 has been a deadly year for Burkina Faso. Hundreds of civilians have been killed this year, despite the security forces receiving military training from the US and France. CGTN's Robert Nagila brings us more details.
The latest attack by jihadi militants targeted the northern town of Arbinda, leaving at least 35 civilians dead. President Roch Marc Christian Kabore said Tuesday subsequent fighting between security forces and militants left 80 militants dead, as well as 7 soldiers. The military says the jihadis assaulted the town after a failed attempt to attack a military detachment in Somme province. On December 1st, at least 14 people were killed after gunmen opened fire inside a church in Burkina Faso. The victims were attending a service at a church in Hontakura in the eastern part of the country. In November, at least 37 civilians working for Canadian gold mining company Samatho were killed and more than 60 wounded after gunmen attacked their convoy. Days later, the military said it had killed 32 terrorists in 2 separate operations in the north of the country. In January 2016, 30 people, half of them foreigners, were killed after jihadis stormed a hotel in the capital, Ouagadougou. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, let's cross over now to CGTN's Deji Badmus. He's joining us live from Lagos. Deji, what is the latest regarding that attack in Burkina Faso?
Well, the latest, Beatrice, is that as you've been reporting, the president of the country, Kabore, has actually declared 48 hours of mourning. And of course, the government has cancelled all Christmas celebration, even though the country is pretty much a Muslim-dominated country. A majority of the population there are Muslim. You still have about 20% of the population who are Christians. And so the government has declared 48 hours of mourning, Christmas celebrations cancelled, and all flags in the country are now flying at half-mast. The situation, of course, the government said it has brought under control, but as we speak, Beatrice, no group has claimed responsibility for these attacks, and it's a pattern that we have seen over a period of time. Quite a number of the attacks we have seen, nobody comes forward to claim responsibility for the attacks, but of course everyone, even the government, is blaming terrorists now linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State.
Deji, it's been a troubled year for Burkina Faso. Who is behind these attacks?
Basically, just as I said, it has to be Al-Qaeda and, of course, militant groups now linked to the Islamic State. But the issue is this. What we're beginning to gather now is that, look, these terrorist groups these terrorist groups now are just big. They are linked to, some of them linked, of course, to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, but they're actually homegrown. They are led by Burkina Babes. We understand, for instance, that some of these groups are led by people from Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso citizens now who have moved to Mali, around the border with Mali, and operate from there. So, and they've been recruiting people now, young people from Burkina Faso over the past 1 year. So it's a no-brainer. It will be difficult, for instance, for foreigners to come from outside to carry out attacks in some of these villages. You would definitely need local people who would understand them. So no doubt, local terrorists linked to Al-Qaeda, of course, the Islamic State, and you have quite a number of jihadist groups too operating in the Sahel. So these are the people carrying out these attacks. Unfortunately, for most of the attacks we've seen, as I said, you do not have some of these major groups now coming forward to claim responsibility for the attacks. But the government is very categorical that the attacks are basically carried out by groups now linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. It's just like in Nigeria, where you have Boko Haram operating, Boko Haram carrying out attacks, but, you know, a faction of Boko Haram, of course, linked to the Islamic State. That's the group known as ISWAP now. But I think with time, things will become clearer. But of course, jihadist groups are basically responsible for the attacks we see in Burkina Faso and the entire Sahel region.
So, Deji, we have seen the French President Emmanuel Macron in West African countries looking at the issue of security there. Burkina Faso is among the G5 countries that have been fronting security in the Sahel. Is there a connection between the latest attacks and security efforts, including that recent visit by the French President?
I think there's possibly a connection because, I mean, this attack happened just days after President Macron visited the region. There's a possibility that this militants, the jihadist groups now, are trying to send out a message to France. We know that they're not happy about the presence of French troops now in the Sahel. We have about 4,500 French troops now in that region. They are not happy. They want the French troops now to leave the region so that they'll have a free reign. Their ultimate goal, of course, is to create an Islamic State, sort of, an Islamic caliphate now, especially in the Sahel region. So there's a possibility and that there's a connection, that they're sending a message, not just to France, but to also the government and authorities of Burkina Faso and, of course, Mali and Niger and Chad, of course, that, you know, that the more they continue to cooperate with the French, the more they would continue to see attacks of this nature, because this was a deadly attack. So, to my mind, this is clearly a message to the French government, to the governments of the Sahel region that, look, if they do not sever relations now with France and get the troops, I mean French troops, out of the region, that they're going to come. Because it just doesn't make sense that, you know, they would attack women who were actually getting water, you know, attack defenseless women now. Basically, they wanted to send a clear message and get people to react. And somehow that's what they're getting, unfortunately. So,
right.
But will the French pull out of the region? I do not see that happening because, to be candid, I don't think the Sahel governments now can actually take on these jihadists now on their own without the support of the international community, especially the French.
Deji Badmus joining us there from Lagos with that update on Burkina Faso. Thank you. Meanwhile, an Islamist insurgency has left some skeptical over their safety during the holiday season in Burkina Faso. Suspected jihadist groups with links to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State have carried out multiple attacks in the past year on churches, threatening once peaceful relations between the Muslim majority and Christians. CGTN's Brian Toussaint looks at how some Christians will be celebrating Christmas.
Regina Bande, a Catholic living in Burkina Faso's capital, attends Mass every morning. She says she stays informed about the security situation, by keeping in touch with friends who live in more dangerous areas.
I often speak to people who are at Huawei in the north and in the Sahel as well. They say it's not as easy being a Christian because when they go to Mass, they don't know if it will be their last Sunday. But our faith and our hopes guides us always. It leads us to persevere.
A series of attacks on Christians have taken place over the past year. Just this month, gunmen opened fire inside a church near the border with Niger, killing at least 14 people. But for Bande, these attacks should not discourage people from worshiping.
Our faith cannot be shaken by the events that we are going through. Christmas will be celebrated like previous times. We will go to Mass. We also have to buy things before Christmas to prepare for the festivities.
However, not everyone is doing the same. This year, vendors selling Christmas products say business is not booming.
There was no market. People don't have money. There are tensions in the country, so this year people don't have the money to spend, and people are very unhappy. So the sales this year are not as good as last year.
The past year's violence in Burkina Faso has killed hundreds and forced nearly 1 million people from their homes. This is worrying for a country that has long prided itself on its religious tolerance. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
The United Nations has raised alarm over reports of executions and abductions of civilians in Nigeria's northeastern Borno State. Borno State was the birthplace of the Boko Haram insurgency about a decade ago.
Many civilians have reportedly been executed and many others abducted by armed groups yesterday in northern Borno State and on the Damaturu-Biu Road linking Yobe and Borno states. Over 36,000 people were killed since the beginning of the conflict, about half of them civilians. In 2019, 9 aid workers have reportedly lost their lives while trying to provide life-saving assistance to those who desperately need it in Borno states.
Meanwhile, the United States is considering scaling back its forces from West Africa, possibly a total withdrawal, as the U.S. Defense Department reviews a troop deployment across the globe. CGTN's Toby Muse has more from Washington.
The New York Times reports that the decision is part of an ongoing debate within the US government about where to focus the deployment of approximately 200,000 US troops stationed abroad. Should they be used to fight terrorism or perhaps to prepare for a possible confrontation with global powers like Russia and China? If the troops are withdrawn from West Africa, it would mean abandoning a recently built $110 million drone base in Niger and ending support to French forces operating in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. 4 American troops were killed in operations in Niger in 2017. US troops are primarily focused on helping fight radical Islamist groups like Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda and ISIL. Proponents of withdrawing the troops say the US should stop fighting smaller terrorist organizations that lack the ability to physically attack the United States itself. Too often, critics say the US has ended up embroiled in local civil conflicts which can drag on for years with no realistic end goal. If the troops are removed from West Africa, it's not clear where they will be deployed. President Donald Trump has frequently criticized the never-ending wars the US is currently in, such as Afghanistan and Iraq. The reviews of troops in Africa will be followed by one in Latin America and then the Middle East. Toby Muse, CGTN, Washington.
4 Libyan civilians have been killed after a projectile exploded in a vegetable market on Tuesday. The explosion took place in an eastern suburb of Tripoli. Forces loyal to the UN-backed government blamed the Libyan National Forces for the attack. The LNA troops led by General Khalifa Haftar have been attempting to capture Tripoli. Over 284 civilians have been killed in the fighting. You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. The state of Liberia's health sector after the Ebola threat. And we'll tell you how Rwanda has gone round the addiction problem and is using morphine to keep pain away.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Cote d'Ivoire presidential candidate and former rebel leader Guillaume Soro is back in Europe. This is after an arrest warrant was issued for him in his home country, forcing him to cancel a planned homecoming. Soro has spent months overseas in Paris, but was to return for the October 2020 election. He instead diverted to Ghana to avoid arrest upon arrival in the Ivorian capital, Abidjan. The warrant is said to be for breach of state security, receiving stolen public resources, and money laundering. Liberia was the third country to be hit by the 2014-2015 Ebola outbreak. It had the most reported deaths at more than 4,800. Health workers in particular were severely affected. This was attributed to a fragile health system as well as lack of awareness. 5 years on, authorities say the health systems are much stronger. CGTN Susan Mwongeli reports.
CH Rene Hospital is the largest public hospital in Moserrado in Liberia. The hospital was hardest hit by the Ebola outbreak. Like most hospitals, it was temporarily shut down after several of its prominent health workers died. CH Rene lost over 40 health workers, with 100 plus others infected. Orator was working at the hospital at the time.
We didn't even have GYN gloves. We were just using examination gloves. And our friends kept telling us, look, Ebola is real. Ebola is real. You people have to take time. But then you come to work and pregnant women come, what will you do? You will not send them back. You have to attend to them.
During the height of the outbreak, she attended to a 16-year-old girl that was 28 weeks pregnant. The girl came in bleeding heavily, prompting an emergency delivery. After an unsuccessful attempt to deliver the baby, both mother and child succumbed.
So after I have been 9 days before my son called me to tell me, say, oh, the patient you attended to, they said the patient is positive. In fact, the viral load is high. So I broke down. I feared they were not fair to me because I was giving care. I think it was just simple to tell me, say, look, the patient was positive. I think you need to isolate yourself from your family because we all know what Ebola did at that time. But they left me undone and nobody told me. So I felt bad, I felt terrible.
A World Health Organization report at the time showed that health workers were between 21 and 32 times more likely to be infected with Ebola than people in the general population. Part of the reason was poor training, too few staff members, and shortage or improper use of protective equipment. Fast forward, and there have been some changes. The hospital has expanded to include more bed capacity. But some of the same issues still persist.
The patients come to the hospital without anything. We all know the present situation in our country. There is nothing absolutely in the country. Can you imagine we can even buy, like last day we're buying sheets to do patient, to take down patient report or history. Yes, that's how bad it is.
Other challenges include frequent power outages. Emergency services are lacking. Only months ago, in September, health workers took to the streets protesting low wages and poor working conditions. Government says it has no money.
Last year, our total budget to the health system was $77 million. Now, out of the $77 million, almost $45 million went towards salary payment for healthcare workers. And the balance go towards supplies, medications, and you name it, drugs and so forth. If you look at our essential drugs, in order to meet the demand, we need about $22 million a year to meet that demand. And from the balance that is left over, it just cannot. So we depend on donors, we depend on partners. But the partners themselves, as the country improves, their support drops.
But despite the challenges on the curative side of the health system, Liberia has taken steps forward with regard to surveillance and early detection.
And so we understand the gravity of what Ebola is or any infectious disease. As we speak now, we are personally dealing with 3 Lassa outbreaks in the country, and the country is quiet. And until I say to you, you will know. And this is the kind of system we have, because one of the key things about dealing with outbreaks is that if you have the diagnostic capacity, and this is what we didn't have that led to some of the issues. Now we have the capability in country where it doesn't matter what it is, within 12 to 48 to 24 hours, we can tell you which of the disease we are dealing with, and by then, our contact tracers, based on the strong surveillance system that we have, we can make sure that we contain it.
No doubt a major development, but for a country whose health sector is almost non-existent, early detection is just but a drop in a deep ocean. A lack of basic essential services like ambulances, proper equipment, medicine, and a demotivated workforce only means more lives could be lost. Susan Mungeli, CGTN, in Monrovia, Liberia.
Now, the festive season has caused widespread excitement worldwide, and Ghana is not any different. Gripped by the Christmas fever, Ghanaians have flocked to Accra's Makola market for last-minute deals. CGTN's Alexandria Majala has the details.
The festive season has dawned upon us, and in Accra's Makola market, the Christmas spirit is in the air. The area is bustling with people filled with cheer as they search for bargains ahead of Christmas Day. Traders are aiming to cash in on decorations and presents for family and friends.
When the year comes to a close, a lot of people come to town, and that is how you can tell the year has ended. People come to buy lots of stuff, and there are also people who come and don't buy anything. I believe next year is going to be really nice.
A trendy bar situated in Accra's Oshu district is among the establishments that are hoping to make a buck during this festive season. Republic Bar and Grill is renowned for its famous unique cocktail dubbed the Kokoroko, which means big and mighty. The success of this bar is hinged on Ghana's national drink, akpeteshie.
So 7 years ago, we decided to set up Republic Bar, my brother and I, and key to our objective is the utilization of akpeteshie, which is the local indigenous spirit of Ghana. In this case, we use the sugarcane variant, and we haven't looked back since then. It's a base for all our cocktails, although they may all taste differently. Akpeteshie is the main base for all our cocktails.
Akpeteshie is produced mainly in the countryside. It is made by distilling palm wine or sugarcane and is the most popular alcoholic drink in Ghana. For those unaccustomed to the drink, it can feel like it's burning the drinker's lips all the way down to their stomach. However, the Republic Bar woos customers by mixing it with the extremely sweet pink bissap flour, crushed ice, water, and mint leaf.
Local cocktails are our specialty. Our flagship drink at the Republic Bar is the Kokoroko. It's called the Kokoroko, which means the mighty, the big, and the strong. And its base ingredients is from sorrel or bissap. You know, it's from the hibiscus family, and it's a very indigenous West African plant of flower. And we use the sap and also local herbs and spices in the preparation of cocoa. It's red in color, which goes very well with the season we are in, this festive season of Christmas. So yeah, the cocoa is the best enjoyed drink over here at the Republic Bar and Grill, and I would like you to try it if you can.
This year, the Accra Metropolitan Assembly has partnered with private business for the #LightUpAccra project. It has also set up a landmark campaign dubbed the Year of Return to mark the 400 years of the first enslaved Africans who arrived in America. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
And it's Christmas cheer across the continent. In Zimbabwe, celebrations, however, are quite modest, coming at the end of a very challenging year. CGTN's Faramwa Kutuya reports.
It's just hours to Christmas Day and there's a rush to get some last-minute shopping done.
It's hard to celebrate, especially when you compare this to previous years. But we will just get the few things that we can and get together with family and friends.
2019's been a tough year, characterized by soaring prices and shortages of some commodities. It may not be like a Christmas from yesteryear, but Zimbabweans are doing all they can to make the most of it amidst the challenges. As shoppers hunt for Christmas Eve bargains, Nigel Hlatini is contemplating spending the holiday away from his wife, owing to hiked bus fares as transport operators cash in on the peak in travelers.
My wife is in the village and I am here. It's not the ideal scenario and not what I had planned. Last week, bus fare to my village was $75. It's $130 now.
He says he'll do more tending to his yard on Christmas Day and try to do something for some of his grandchildren with whom he lives.
The holiday has lost significance for us adults. It's now special for the young ones. Even though things are tough, we've been putting away a little in the last few months to try and get them something so that they can enjoy the day.
Hopefully their joy will be enough to make up for not being with his wife this Christmas. Faramwa Kutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Let's now turn to Rwanda. The country has found a smart way to meet the demand for pain medication. CGTN's Ashta Tal has more on how locally produced liquid morphine is helping patients across the country.
This lab in Rwanda is producing a key element in helping hundreds manage crippling pain. Following the 1994 genocide, there were little to no options for pain medication. Under strict government oversight, labs like these are helping fill this vital need. From the lab, the medicine is delivered to patients in need. Today, 56-year-old Madeleine Mukantagara rushes to reach a patient with cervical cancer.
I am taking the medicine now, but I'm still suffering. Now when the dose is increased, maybe it will help me, I don't know.
For Diane, the job is hard but necessary.
The hardest thing about my job is seeing someone who was normal before now approaching the end of their lives step by step.
Countries in the West are dealing with an opioid addiction crisis. U.S. lawmakers pushed the World Health Organization to remove certain guidelines on prescribing opioids. The WHO now plans to revise them. But others have pushed back against the move.
Without pain management, there is no human right. If people are dying in torture of pain, that country, that community is not observing human rights regulations.
In Rwanda, liquid morphine is used to treat chronic life-limiting diseases, but not chronic pain. The distinction looks to avoid the possibility of patients developing an addiction. Astatal, CGTN.
Let's now take a quick look at your business news. Here's what's ahead. The central bank in Somalia orders forex traders to close forex accounts in commercial banks immediately. And Algeria's red gold, how saffron farming is gaining popularity in the country.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The Central Bank of Somalia has ordered forex traders to close forex accounts in commercial banks immediately. The directive has dealt a blow to the budding forex business in the country. The Reserve Bank also says that commercial banks are expected to submit the names of forex trading companies as well as the funds held. The forex trading business in Somalia has been growing rapidly, partly because potential traders pay between $500 and $1,000 for a monthly return of about 40%.
I disagree with the directive by the Somali Central Bank to shut down accounts of forex companies because forex business provides employment opportunities for many young fresh graduates from universities and colleges.
I completely disagree with the decision of the central bank. Forex business is only creative idea to make money here for young people. I call upon the government to reconsider its decision on the forex farms.
Chinese tech giant Huawei has organized a ceremony to honor students and trainers from the Huawei ICT Academy and Seeds for the Future 2019 program. Tunisia first hosted the Huawei ICT Academy program at the end of 2017, making it the first French-speaking country in Africa to do so. CGTN's Adnan Chauchi has the details.
Each year, Huawei sends to China 10 Tunisian ICT engineering students who are rigorously selected through the program Seeds for the Future. A total of 1,900 Tunisian students have participated in the competition of Huawei ICT Academy since 2017.
So Future Seeds is a program that every year we would select the excellent students in cooperation with Tunisian government and send them to China for a 2 weeks program to experience the China culture, history, and advanced technology.
Participants shed light on the remarkable research environment at Huawei and the skills they have acquired while training at the company's headquarters in China.
The Huawei ICT Academy prepares students for the professional environment. Huawei is the world's leading telecommunications maker. Taking part in this program is a privilege for any engineer in the world.
The engineering students from Tunisia's top 10 universities have described a unique technological as well as human experience during their training in China.
The experience at Huawei was extraordinary on all levels. I've not only learned about Chinese culture and language, but also the latest on 5G, big data, as well as IoT. China and Huawei have the most advanced ICT research centers in the world.
We visited Shenzhen and Beijing. We were introduced to a new technology that Huawei is developing for humanity. My dream is to join Huawei team in China after graduation.
Since the launch of the project, Huawei has sent more than 55 students to China by its cooperation with more than 20 Tunisian universities in the program. The Tunisian Minister of Higher Education praised Huawei's role in developing Tunisia's ICT industry. The minister added that Huawei ICT Academy and the Seeds for the Future allow future engineers to improve their knowledge, share their skills, and compare themselves in theory and practice with other engineers from around the world. Aden Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Moving now to Algeria, where a growing number of farmers have chosen to grow the luxury spice saffron. It is the most expensive spice in the world, demanding delicate care to ensure the farmer can earn a strong harvest for ready markets. In the past 2 years, farmers, especially in the desert regions of the country, have adopted specific steps to expand Algeria's market share in saffron sales.
Among the reefs of this desert land in Gagdai province, residents are preparing the land for saffron cultivation. And the hot sun makes the already hard process tougher.
The process of bringing saffron crocus bulbs to this arid desert is a long story with a lot of challenges. I cooperated at first with an Algerian institute in obtaining it, but I alone faced the challenges of nature and the risk of investing in desert agriculture.
This is a model that is used by hundreds of Algerian farmers who are focused on planting the precious spice.
My primary goal is to succeed in growing and expanding saffron and into other crops. But the first problem here is water due to administrative bureaucracy and the high cost of bringing water here. As you see, I am growing saffron now and I don't know whether I will get water or not.
Salaheddin and 200 farmers in the area have set up a local association to short-circuit the challenges of farming this luxury spice.
The saffron plant succeeds a lot in this region due to the abundance of sunlight. I think that the saffron will have a promising future here in the Algerian desert.
Cultivation of saffron is a profitable and inexpensive agricultural activity that generates important income in hard currency.
As you can see, after days and weeks of watering and care today, we pick saffron flowers. European laboratories to which we sent our product confirmed its high quality. However, I also want to sell it in the local market as a first stage, and I am not thinking about exporting for now.
The wholesale price of saffron ranges from around $1,000 to $5,000 per kilogram, while the kilogram of seeds is sold in Algeria for between $50 to $100, and this has encouraged other farmers in the region to join in cultivation of the nation's red gold. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Let's now bring you an inspiring story out of South Africa. 2 South African female farmers are doing it for themselves. The mother and daughter pair left the corporate world to go into commercial farming, and now they're already making waves in a male-dominated industry. The women grow fresh produce and supply it to a local distributor, but have big ambitions to extend their value chain. Let's hear more from Julie Shire.
Mother and daughter Antoinette and Lungi Rubella had both had enough of their job. They ditched the corporate world and went into commercial farming. Antoinette in particular had a difficult life and wanted a fresh start.
I'm from a very abusive marriage. Through the abuse, and then, I decided to do it alone. After my divorce, I decided to go solo with my daughter. She wasn't happy at her work, and I was from, the dark side. So we, partnered and said, now we're starting this. And I've never been happier.
The Rubellas had their own farm but acquired a new plot in Mahalisburg through government's land reform program. Adapting to a new life and career, however, was tough.
It's very difficult. You have to have the know-how. You have to have the correct skilled team to run the farm. You have to have the knowledge of how everything operates. We got here in 2010 and the farm started being fully operational only 4 years ago. And to get it up and running like this, we first installed the infrastructure. Then when we got our production loan, then we could be able to put in the crops that we wanted in, and that way the business would be running and would be able to service our financial commitments.
The operation is now firmly on its feet, and the ladies are part of a mentorship program run by brewing company SAB. They grow tomatoes, peppers and other vegetables in more than 30 tunnels using hydroponics.
Hydroponic planting or vertical farming is the future. So we are able to store water for a length of time. And we can be planting in here because we have controlled environment for our crops. So the benefit of this is that should there be extreme weather patterns or environmental issues, then we can easily control it from this environment. And the water also, we will not have severe water shortages as we already have storage for that. So we are guaranteed to produce throughout the time.
The female farmers want to grow their agro-processing operations and help uplift other women in their community who are the hardest hit by poor economic circumstances.
My heart breaks every time when I see women standing at the gate there looking for a job. I wish I could employ all of them, but I cannot, especially with the minimal that I have. I employ like 10 guys from the area, but then I would like to have women because they are the ones that are suffering with children.
The rebels say they have never looked back since taking the plunge into farming nearly 10 years ago and are determined to build a legacy for generations to come. Julie Shire, CGTN, Mahalisburg, South Africa.
Now, 2019 has been a fascinating year in the world of technology. Some dazzling achievements in AI and robotics, as well as some notorious lapses in security and privacy. Mark New takes a look back at the year in tech.
In 2019, we saw robots that moved in unique ways, and others that were hard to distinguish they were robots at all. Boston Dynamics unveiled a robot that could perform a gymnastics routine. Cloud Minds unveiled the XR1, which can make precise movements like threading a needle. But completely imitating the human hand is an ongoing challenge.
The human hand is so complex and so good at grabbing all sorts of items, but there's billions and billions of different objects out there, and so not one kind of approach is what will work for every kind of product.
Imitating the human mind is also progressing rapidly through artificial intelligence. One of the most startling examples occurred when IBM held the world's first live-stream public debate between a human and an AI-driven machine. The machine, Project Debater, drew on a collection of 10 billion sentences and 400 million articles to formulate arguments in support of subsidizing preschools.
While I cannot experience poverty directly and have no complaints concerning my own standards of living, I still have the following to share. Regarding poverty, research clearly shows that a good preschool can help kids overcome the disadvantages.
The debate ended with polls indicating the human debater had swayed a greater percentage of the audience, but that the machine had enriched the audience's knowledge more.
What the system was able to do, and it's very difficult for a human to do in a short amount of time, is get a lot of information and data. But the human, I think, was clearly better in building an argument step by step.
For tech giant Apple, it was a somewhat uneventful year on the personal devices side, but a very strategic one. It launched the iPhone 11, which only had incremental changes, including an improved camera, but no 5G yet. But Apple did launch Apple Arcade, its very own credit card, and Apple TV Plus, a streaming service with its own original content featuring A-list Hollywood celebrities.
I think this is the year that Apple really made a strong shift to services. I mean, the services revenue is now, multi-billions of dollars. It's as large as, like a Fortune, 500 company all by itself. You've got a whole range of services now. And of course, what people expect is that at some point, Apple's going to bundle a couple of these to try and make it really compelling.
2019 also had its tech controversies when it was discovered that recordings by smart speakers were being listened to by humans. Employees at Amazon listened to what the Alexa personal assistant records in order to train its artificial intelligence. Google and Apple devices have also done similar things.
They're training these systems, and the way they're doing it is by manual input. Well, the problem is people didn't know that that was going on. They don't expect that their personal private conversations and inside their house, of all places, are going to be listened to by other people. And yet, the funny thing is, we say all this and people get worried and upset, and yet they're still buying them in staggering numbers.
Tech design went full-on space age when Tesla unveiled its all-electric Cybertruck with a towing capacity of more than 6,300 kilos. But its claim of having bulletproof glass also provided the gaffe of the year, as its live demo turned out to be anything but a smashing success.
Well,
Maybe that was a little too hard.
Mark New, CGTN, Cupertino, California.
And stay with us here on Africa Live as we still have more news, views and analysis for you. Here's what's ahead. Nigeria's largest seafood festival takes place in the country's commercial capital, Lagos.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Nigeria's largest seafood festival has taken place in the country's commercial capital, Lagos. The 2019 edition event, organized by the state government, seeks to project its aquaculture and seafood diversity. Here's CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam with more.
Fresh, processed or packaged, a variety of seafood on display at the Lagos Seafood Festival. The annual event showcases the aquaculture potentials of Nigeria's commercial capital to the world. Government, farmers, traders and investors converge to explore business prospects and investment opportunities in the sector.
And Lagos is a state of aquatic splendor. 22% of the land in Lagos is water. We have millions of people in the fisheries value chains in Lagos, from the producers to the people that are in the artisanal fisheries. We believe that this will be a very good opportunity for them to scale up their profitability, the profitability of their business, the productivity of their enterprises.
This is part of government's effort at economic diversification, agriculture being a key area, with a vast network of lagoons, creeks and rivers which pitch fishing as the predominant occupation for locals here. The government is partnering with farmers to reposition agriculture for exports.
We thank the Lagos State government. They empower us. They give us outboard engine, nets, and boats, so to relieve our problem in the river and the sea. So we are going up and down. Anywhere we want to go to fish, we go there successfully.
Seeing is believing. They now see that we have a lot of potential for export, and export is the in thing now, and we need to really do good things, process our fish properly so that we can be accepted out there.
Agriculture has remained a viable sector for President Buhari's economic diversification agenda. The state currently produces about 155,000 tons of fish, but consumption stands at over 300,000 tons. It hopes to scale up production by promoting its aquatic potentials to both local and international markets and stimulate growth of tourism and entertainment through the annual festival. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Let's go now straight to your sports news and start off with some cricket news. Having won 8 out of 9 series from 2016 to the start of 2019, South Africa has lost 3 of its last 4 to indicate the team's regression. Cricket World Cup champ England is similarly off form, having lost in New Zealand last month. South Africa's 3-0 humiliation in India in its most recent series in October confirmed that off-field problems with the national board are affecting on-field performances. Enoch Mkwe has been replaced for the England series by Mark Butcher after a public outcry over the India series. Mkwe was surprisingly made interim coach by the board for the India tour after one season coaching at a domestic level in South Africa. But the Proteas are confident to end the year on a high end and start 2020 on the right footing.
Yes, that's right. We're normally a team that has got a very good bounce back ability, play our best cricket almost when our backs are against the wall, show a lot of resilience to fight. So we have spoken about that. A good thing for us is, I suppose, we're starting at Supersport Park, which is a venue where we have done well in the past. Not so much the other venues where we've started some of our test matches. So, yeah, but we know it's something that we need to be better and to improve on. I think especially against a side like England, you want to make sure you start really well.
The Russian Olympic Committee chairman has announced in Moscow that the Olympic Committee would support the Russian Anti-Doping Agency's appeal against the World Anti-Doping Agency's decision to bar Russia from major sporting events. Stanislav said that Russian athletes should be allowed to participate in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics under the Russian flag. He also described WADA's decision as punitive, adding that it would not contribute to the reinstatement of RUSADA in any way. WADA earlier in December banned the country's colors and anthem from events, including the Olympics, for 4 years as punishment for having provided it with doctored lab data.
I am sure that Russian sports people should travel to the Tokyo Olympic Games as a team, which will be formed by the National Olympic Committee in accordance with the Olympic Charter. And we will do everything in our power for our athletes to compete in Japan under the Russian tricolor.
To some of the court news now. A Senegalese basketball player traded his jersey for a tuxedo and a maestro's baton. The 7'5" center Taco Fall made a guest appearance as a conductor with the Boston Pops during a holiday concert. After some careful coaching from longtime Boston Pops conductor Keith Lockhart, Fall suited up in a size 48 double extra long tux and took the stage. He led the Pops in the season standard sleigh ride, complete with a spin move that wowed both the audience and the musicians as well. Football news now. A new Arsenal manager, Mikel Arteta, says players must take up responsibility and be accountable for their actions on the pitch if they are to remain a part of the club's plans in the future. The new Gunners boss says he is happy with his squad but believes there can be improvements to the side. The 37-year-old will make his managerial debut when the 11th placed side travel to Bournemouth on Thursday in the English Premiership.
I think that we have a really good team, that there are a lot of things to improve. But at least the two things that I demanded from them, they were done. So they committed to something and they did it. So it was a good starting point.
And you've had a couple of training sessions with them now. What you've been working on, what's your priority?
Well, yesterday's session, it was for the players that weren't very involved in the game.